If you sell 3D printed products online and want to increase your sales, then I'm going to show you exactly how to do that in today's video. Welcome back, guys, and welcome to another video. And in today's video, we are going to cover how to take product photos for your 3D printed products. So if you are an online seller that is selling products online, 3D printed products, if you're selling through Facebook Marketplace or on OfferUp, if you're selling anything online, realistically, you need to have the skill of taking high quality product photos that properly showcase your product. Now, when it comes to 3D printing, it's a little bit more unique because if you were to have a print shown under harsh lighting, you can kind of see all the imperfections and the layer lines that appear in the prints. More specifically, if you're using something like PLA or PETG. Now, if you have more premium filaments like PLA carbon fiber or PET GCF or maybe nylon or stuff like that, it's a little bit easier to get away with taking product photos even with harsh lighting, because most of those imperfections will not show. So in today's video, I more or less want to go over my workflow as to how I take product photos, how it's essentially evolved over time, and more or less how you can take product photos to not only increase your sales, but more or less make your photography look 10 times better. Now, the very first thing I want to cover here is more or less my workflow and my setup. Now, for me, I have an office here, and my office is actually quite small. So I needed to combine more or less having my printers, my studio light box, and more or less some sort of workstation, which is like my main desk and my main work area, all into one unit, especially with this room being so small. So my printers are more or less on the right hand side of my room, which is basically right behind me where the lighting setup is. And I have these two printers, which is my X1 and X1 Carbon, more or less do all the printing. When I take my prints, usually I like to have some sort of desk setup where I have a desk mat and proper lighting to kind of show the product, and more or less to get a good view of the product. And more or less, I also have a light box here, which allows me to take product photos using the lights inside. Now, to kind of break down more or less, that was more or less my workflow. But to kind of break down all the tools that I use, this is what they are. Now, the first tool I would highly recommend anyone get is a tripod. And a tripod doesn't even have to be this expensive, but the one I have here is a MagSafe tripod, which allows you to mount your phone on the MagSafe tripod itself. And it works really well for mounting your phone and keeping, I guess, taking product photos anywhere. And this one that I have here, I don't remember the name of it, but it extends to about like 6 feet high. So it can be pretty tall, but honestly, this is a game-changing product here, and especially since it's MagSafe, and I could just snap on my phone on there and it comes right off, and I can easily take it back on and off and stuff like that. My second tool here, mentioning the iPhone, is a phone. Obviously, it's my phone right now that I'm using is iPhone 15 Pro Max. This is not spec'd out. It's just up to a 256 gigabytes. And personally, for me, I don't really take 4K photography or 4K videos, and I don't really take photos under like the most premium 48 megapixel that I think the iPhone supports. So for me, it doesn't really matter in terms of having the highest detail, as I really don't want to use extremely high detailed product photos anyway, especially since they're just product photos. It's not like I'm using this for some sort of art piece or photography. But in some cases, unless I absolutely need to use it, which is rarely, I won't use it at all. So the first thing we've covered is the tripod. The next thing is the iPhone. The next tool that I have here is this light bar that I have mounted on my desk. So this light bar here is really cool. I believe it's called an engineer's light or an architect's light. And essentially what it allows you to do is it allows you to mount it onto the side of your desk and to kind of have a light hanging over the main view of your desk. And this is great because this light bar here has two flaps on the outside, which essentially allows you to fold them in and out. And more or less, you can kind of get a good idea as to how this works. And it does a really good job of kind of showing all of the, or getting good angles of the lighting angles of the product on the center. And honestly, for me, I actually added this part at the top, which is kind of like a MagSafe accessory, which allows me to take top-down view videos of my products, so I can kind of get the lighting and the top-down view angle, which is honestly absolutely killer for me, since I can take a different angle of the product itself and kind of showcase it in like TikTok videos or any sort of Instagram content that I do plan on editing and posting and stuff like that. The next product here that I would highly recommend is some sort of desk clamp, specifically that allows you to mount your phone onto your desk. Now, you can use a tripod for this, but for me, I like to have different angles of what I'm doing. For me, I like the top-down view showing the products from the top-down angle. I also like a side view or a side look of how the product looks as well. So it doesn't have to be all just one angle. Now, of course, this will require you to have multiple phones. I have the iPhone 15 Pro Max and then I have an iPhone 12. Of course, that's not a luxury that everyone has, so just do what you can. But more or less, these are the tools that I use because it allows me to take product photos and as well as take videos from the side from different angles and kind of play around with what I'm working with depending on what I want to create that day. Additionally, for my main lighting setup for most of the product photos that I take moving forward is this light box here. This light box, I believe, is about 36 by 36 inches in width and height, and as well as in depth. So it's basically a big square. And what I really like about this light box is that it does a really good job at showing all different angles or lighting up all different angles of the product within the box itself. Additionally, it's quite bright, so I don't think the camera does it justice, but more or less, it does a really good job at allowing me to take product photos of whatever it is I'm working on, and I could just turn on some music in the background, kind of get to work and take the photos, and essentially just kind of get those higher quality, more premium look product photos. So now that we've gone over the main setup or the main tools that I use, I do want to advise you guys that you don't need to have all of these things. Honestly, the only tool you really ever need is just your phone. And that's how personally I started. All I did was take product photos of my products using my phone. I didn't have no fancy setup, fancy desks, fancy lighting. Honestly, this was all gear and accessories that I accumulated over time. And honestly, it's probably going to change within the next year too as I kind of upgrade and get more cash and more I guess excess cash flow to kind of spend and upgrade my equipment because you want to invest in higher quality equipment. But the main thing here is taking product photos and how to take it, which leads me into the next thing, which is how to take your photos and more or less how many should you take. Now, when it comes to taking product photos, there's really no right answer for this. The right answer is the one that sells the best, really. Realistically speaking, the one that sells the best, meaning that gets you sales, that's the best product photos. So you may want to tinker around with what works for you. So for example, if you want to use a light box to take your product photos, sounds great. Additionally, what I like about a light box is that it allows you to stage environments. So you can kind of have different environments. You can stage stuff. You can put, you can put photos behind, create some sort of depth or some sort of look to the product itself. So it kind of gives it more of a lifelike look, if that makes sense. Kind of like a photo that you take or that a photographer fakes for like a well-known brand. Additionally, if that's not a look you're going for, you can also go with the traditional desk type of setup. So for example, you can just have product photos on your desk, have some sort of either natural lighting or some ambient lighting within your room, take those photos of those products and kind of tinker around with what you like and what you're working with. I would say it would be accumulative of different things. So the first product photo should be your main shot, and your main shot being the one that is your thumbnail across all your channels whenever you sell the product. So for example, if you take a look at any product out on the marketplace, the first photo that you see when it comes to the product, that's usually the main shot, which is the money shot, and the money shot is what really sells the product. In addition to the money shot, there should be several photos following along that money shot, which also shows the product in the best light as well. So the money shot should be like a really good product photo of the design. The next photo should be maybe a side profile or side look of the product. Maybe the third photo should be some details or some different things about the product itself, like maybe it holds stuff or maybe it has some sort of practical use or whatever it could be. The fourth photo could be the product in actual use. So maybe if you have, for example, I have this SD card toolbox that I designed, and it holds SD cards, so it needs to show that it actually does that to the person who is looking at that product to kind of for them to see or to get the assumption that this is what this product does. And then from there, you can also take additional product photos that kind of showcase the product in different angles and different lighting, maybe in utility. For example, this product here as well also claps onto or has a clasp or a carabiner to hold on to a backpack. So, it kind of shows the utility of it instead of just the design itself. So kind of want to play around with what you're working with when it comes to taking product photos. There's really no one size fits all. And realistically speaking, you're not going to really get that answer online because it depends on what you sell at the end of the day. So when you're taking product photos, how many should you take? Now, when it comes to the amount, honestly as much as you can and as many angles as you can, because when it comes to taking product photos, when you take the photo itself, in that moment it might look nice and clean and perfect, but when you open it up on your computer, it looks entirely different. I would say 80% of the time. For some reasons, it could be the angle, it could be the lighting, it can be that the desk might be a little bit crooked or slanted or stuff like that. Maybe it's slightly off center. Things like that really get annoying, and more or less it can be, I guess, infuriating, because you spend all this time taking product photos and you open up in your computer and it's not the way you want it to be. So, with that said, when you're taking product photos, try to take as many as you can and try to set the stage early on as possible before you take it. So, for example, if you were to open up your Notes app on your computer or on your phone, kind of get some general ideas as to what angles or what side or what profiles you want to take, if that makes sense. So that way, when you stage product photos to take the photos, you know exactly what kind of photos you're taking, and more or less you're going in there and taking them accurately in the best light possible. Additionally, for me, since my phone takes really good photos and I say a lot of storage, I would just take as many as I can. So I would have a lot of repeat photos, and sometimes I just play around with more or less the lighting or the brightness of the camera in the camera setting. So I just use a camera app within the iPhone. I don't really use anything super fancy, but more or less this allows me to take these photos, and I take as many as I can. And I have basically a whole catalog of photos, and maybe like 100 to 150. And then from that 100 to 150, I really nail it down and break it down and kind of get those, maybe I would say the top 5 photos that would really sell the product. Now, of course, you really don't have to take that much. That's just for my sake. I take that much because I can do it. But in your case, if you don't have enough space or storage to do that, don't worry about it. Just take, maybe I would say, anywhere from 25 to 50, and kind of get a good idea as to, getting better over time as you take your product photos. Now, when it comes to editing, for me, I don't want to get involved in terms of Lightroom and Photoshop. And honestly, that takes a lot of time, and taking product photos takes a lot of time, but also editing the photos also takes a lot of time as well. So, with that said, when it comes to editing the photos, my source or my main choice is Canva. Now, for any of you professional photographers, I know it's probably not the best software for this, but honestly, I think Canva does a really good job, because I could just import those photos into the Canva drive, and then from there, I can open up a new document and just import the photos that I think are best. And they have a basic editing function for editing those photos and adjusting the, I guess, saturation, the contrast, the intensity, maybe some sort of whatever it is. It gives you some basic stuff. But honestly, that's all I've been using, and it works really well. And then from those products, from those top products that I choose or select from, then from there I have the 5 best products that I like, that I would use, and then I would, of course, filter or create a folder within my computer. One would be final, which final would be the final product photos, and another one would be raw, and the raw photos are just the raw photos. They're unedited. They're just straight from the phone coming into the computer without any sort of touch up or any sort of clarity added to it, or any sort of saturation or coloring added to it. It's just the basic photos listed in raw. So with that said, that pretty much wraps up everything. I know I covered a lot of details and as much information in this video, and more or less I didn't want this video to be a crazy amount of time as well. More or less kind of give you guys an idea as to how I take my product photos, and if you decide to take your own product photos for your own products, this should give you a general idea as to what you should invest your money into if you do have some excess cash to spend some money in some sort of lighting and equipment. But if you really don't, it's totally okay. Use your iPhone or your Android phone, assuming that you have a good phone with a good quality camera, which is most phones nowadays. So with that said, thank you guys so much for watching today's video. Hopefully this video has been insightful and informative. Additionally, if you want to upgrade your skill set and learn how to sell your own line of 3D printed products and learn how to create and design your own products, there'll be a link down below where you can get access to all the resources that I have within the group and the community. Or if you want to further upgrade your skill set, we do have a course down below teaching you everything you need to know from start to finish to help you get started in making your first sales and turn your printer either into a side hustle or maybe into a business. And with that said, I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.